Hello, good evening, everyone. So my name is Hobby, and this is my very gracious co-host, King. We're
Hi.
super excited about this week and all that it has to hold. So, we figured that just before Christmas sort of came, we sort of put together a bit of a campaign as an organization just to, think about what's coming, not so much where we are now or what's happened, but what's coming. I think there's been such an absolute miss with us, I guess, not thinking about the future and what could be bright in the future and what to look forward to. So we want to take a chance to really do that now to give us a bit of positivity around Christmas instead of always being concerned about what's happened behind us, but moving forward. So I've decided to put on a bit of glitz and glam today. I don't normally wear these on camera, but I figured what I wear them in the privacy of my own home.
No, but you know what? I love them. I absolutely love them. I'm kind of jealous. Like, gee, I love them. What is that on the front? Is that like
Well, these are
eyebrows?
bejazzled. Do you call them bejazzled? I think bejazzled. They're really. I put every single stone here on by myself with a glue gun. Thank you very much.
You
So
did?
I take my applause now. Thank you. Uh, not any time recently. I mean, I used to wear these on the stage when we could go on stages. But yeah, we will walk the
Really?
stage again.
On a stage? Harvey, you got things that you just keep surprising me with more and more things. You need to tell me more about this stage thing eventually. Because
Oh yeah,
most
one day, different episode, different episode. But I
okay.
definitely wanted to be festive. I wanted to wear my Christmas hat. I wanted to wear my glitz and glam frames. They don't even have any glass in them. I'm touching my eyeballs as we speak.
Oh, you're a fraud. I see. I'm kidding.
Just to bring a bit of joy, we can, it's going to be a recorded session today. So when we're done recording today, we can actually share that on YouTube, also on Instagram, so people can watch it back. But I think just to have more of an interactive sort of space where we can record things and share that so people can watch it when they're ready. So today's sort of event is going to be broken up into three sections. So the first section is going to be the first 15 minutes, talking about, unfortunately, a bit in hindsight on what's happened, as far as when it comes to sex positivity and sexual well-being,
Mhm.
and we're going to keep it quite community. We're not going to keep it. We're not going to make it, clinical. We're not going to make this
Mhm.
academic. It's really to talk about some of the general dynamics that I think people have reported experiencing during this time. The second
Okay.
section is going to be, which is the second 15 minutes, because it's only going to be 45 minutes today.
Okay.
The second section is going to be sort of like me sharing a bit about what I did to sort of
Mhm.
keep myself sort of positive. And what I mean positive, I mean sex positive. So
Oh,
feeling good about myself, feeling like I could perform and do what I need to be doing.
you said before.
I mean, if I'm honest,
Yes.
yeah. And then the last section is going to be sort of a call to action and telling you a bit about sort of our Christmas well-being drive that's going on as well. So that's something to look forward to at the end. So yeah, the first thing I'm going to talk about is where I was when I heard. So I was minding my own business. I actually was
Sorry, when you heard what?
when I heard that we were going to be going into lockdown. So
Mhm.
obviously I work in sexual health, and so that was quite. It's a very community sort of based thing. You're interacting with people on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Campaigns you're running, everything that you're doing is all about human contact. It's all about literally about human contact.
Lots of outreach. Mhm.
Yeah, so there's like outreach, and there'll be like tables, or there might be like workshops, seminars we were doing, and that was great. I absolutely love my job. I love what I do. But that sort of obviously changed, and so I remember when I got the announcement that we would be working from home, um, and we obviously the obvious question is,
Mhm.
how are we going to do that? Like, how are we going to do that?
Okay.
Um, because again, we have a very contact sort of based, job. We work in the community. We work with people. How are we supposed to do this?
Yeah. Okay. No, but you're right. Even with how we started Black Beetle Health, that's how we started. Literally out in the community. You'd look over and you see yourself, or you see myself, just standing there with the banner and the table set up, and that was like literally grassroots, boots on the ground outreach. And
Yes.
then lockdown happened.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, how do we do that? How do we continue that from home?
Mm.
The internet. but we had to figure out how to do it on the internet, didn't we?
And I think it actually works really well because, people were quite enthusiastic about social media. They were really enthusiastic about Zoom. Obviously, our attendance is not massive tonight, but I think that's very expected. I think it's to be expected considering all that we've had to go through. So we're really thankful for having our guests here tonight. We do have a number of guests this evening. But we just want to acknowledge the fact that, yes, I think people have become a bit burned out by all the virtual stuff that has been made available throughout 2020. So, but I think we were quite resilient. I think we did quite well at ensuring that we, kept our messages really positive and kept the programming going and kept people engaged and continued to answer questions and to have important conversations. So, I think that's great. I think that it's very indicative of what resilience is. I think Black Peter Help is all about that, because I think people always say, well, what's Black Peter Help anyway? And I know, because it's the thinking, what a random name, but it really is all about looking at nature for examples to find solutions to human problems. Okay. And so things like resilience, things like diversity, things like working as part of communities are all things that we want to push. So, but where was the community? It just disappeared. It really disappeared, and challenges sort of started coming up around how we were going to keep people safe. What was the regulation? Can people have sex? Can people continue to meet people? We were frankly at a loss for how to advise people around that, because there was so little that was known about COVID, what was permissible, what was safe. Yeah,
we were treading carefully in the beginning, weren't we? And then again, we sort of felt around and picked up momentum on the social media platforms, figured out a way to engage again virtually. And on top of that, we started building the team even more as well. So it started going, I thought it started going very well. Of course, we had some stuff that didn't go so well either. But it all turned out for the better. And we had a lot of good news and lots of good spouts of news during the year as well, amongst all the chaos. And we had some great engagement opportunities as well.
So that was really great from a sort of an organizational perspective. But then we still didn't know what to tell the community. And that's because the community was as confused as we were, and it's quite a strange situation to be in, where you normally can give the advice quite easily, but you couldn't give the advice because there was no advice to be given, because nobody knew anything. And so I think not forgetting that, sex is a normal part of what everyone, does, unless you identify as asexual, which is perfectly fine as well. But it is a natural human need. It's a natural thing to want to engage in any level of sex. People sort of think, oh, sex is intercourse, but sex comes in all different types of shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's just a bit of a tease. Sometimes it's just a bit of a look.
You said a tease and a lick or a look.
It could be, no, I said it could be a tease. It could start with a look. It could start, people always think it has to result in insertive, intercourse sex, and that is not, that is not true. So,
you love a tease.
Yeah, yes, honey. You forget that a tease is like sometimes the best part of the entire evening. And we skip past that. We skip past all the foreplay. We skip past all that stuff, and we jump straight to what I guess media portrays as what sex is, which we're going to get to a bit later on as well. We talk about our perceptions. So I think that people were quite confused about how to fulfill that need and how to ensure they could continue meeting people, particularly on things like Tinder and Her and Grindr, and I was going to say Plenty of Fish, but let's be honest, that's no longer a thing, is it?
Sorry, so many of those apps are over my head.
Yeah, they are. But people were still like trying to, people had a lot of judgment actually passed on them for continuing to use Grindr, continue to use Tinder, and continue to use dating apps, Scruff and Growler and all these things to try and meet people, forgetting that people were living by themselves many times, forgetting that people didn't have necessarily have gardens. They didn't have family around them. They didn't have, all the things that people were saying, oh, just tap into these things and you'll be fine. But it wasn't a thing for everyone. And so that desire for human connection was still a thing. And people still wanted to make connections. They still wanted to get that tease. They still wanted to, get roughed up a bit.
Manhandle me,
Yeah,
throw me up against the wall, let's do something. But again, there was, I guess, the judgment there wasn't the act of using the app. It was the fact that we were on lockdown, and there were still developing guidelines on whether or not we would be able to meet, but people were still using these apps anyway. And I think that's what the judgment was, not the act of having sex or through seeking sex through these apps, but the coronavirus lockdown factor that kind of was the bigger picture. And that's where I think a lot of the judgment came from.
Yeah, absolutely. And it became really negative really quickly, even for people living with HIV. There was a lot of confusion around whether or not they were at a high risk. And so that put people on edge very much so. They didn't know, in the midst of a campaign, in the midst of a society, in the midst of an understanding where we know that people living with HIV, if their viral load is undetectable, they are perfectly, if not in some cases more safe, to carry on having very, very standard, normal sexual lives and experiences, due to really, really advanced HIV medications and personal practice and preventative tools such as condoms, such as PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis. That again, I said in a recent episode of something that we did, was that was not brought to our communities, and so PrEP came out, and it's like it just completely skipped, Afro-Caribbean, Asian, and Black African communities. There was just really poor uptake. Whereas we know that it was quite common in sort of white communities to see people, getting on the PrEP trial and getting access to these things. And so, there was so much going on. The PrEP trial had just finished. New campaigns were coming out. People were thinking about, I think the HIV conference, the global conference was coming out at that same time, and it all just stopped. There were so many plans, and so we have people being confused about information. We have all these campaigns coming out. We have the natural human desire and need, and it all sort of fizzled into the air. We didn't really know what to do about it. So, no one had the solution. For once, nobody had the solution. And I don't know, I don't know what your experience was, but I felt pretty helpless.
Okay, yeah, I share in that same sentiment. I felt helpless. I felt any kind of feelings or sense of aloneness that I already had anyway from living alone and that sort of thing. It was amplified by by 2, when it was like at that point it was just we were on lockdown for a month, and then when we realized this thing was going to continue, multiply it by 10, I was like a wilted flower in the corner that was just like neglected. That's how I felt in my corner in my room. And well, of course, for me, there's other challenges between trying to hook up and such as well. But of course, because those apps already put a lot of pressure because of the commercial aspect of being gay.
Oh, absolutely.
Or, they kind of push through those things. It's a lot of surface sort of attractions and whatnot. So I mean, now that you have all this time alone, and imagine you're going through an app like Grindr or Tinder, and it's like, all right, there's so much more people on there than before, because at this point everyone's at home and everyone's kind of shopping. And but then it amps up whatever kind of anxieties you might have had before even entering that space, especially when you're overlooked, because it's like, oh my goodness, but there's like 20 times more action going on. I'm not getting to tap into it. So even that is like, it could have made you worse. Honestly, it could have made you worse mentally, just having to tap into that and then not even being successful there. And then
I want to also add to that, King, that there was an assumption that, I know that you're speaking from your perspective, and there's an assumption that because people were in relationships that everything was okay as well. And that is really a really important thing I want to highlight, is that some people were, I'm going to put big air quotes in, lucky to be in relationships. Some people weren't even together, you know, they were in relationships, but they were not together in the same place. Or people were in relationships, but they ended up splitting and going their separate ways because it was too much to be stuck in the same place with someone. Some people were in relationships, and that led to things like domestic violence, and that led, you know, to abuse in the home. And so there's an assumption that being in a relationship or cohabiting,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
was the better option. And that's true for everyone. I think that from a sort of a sex positivity perspective, that left a lot of people quite injured. I think, you know, not really knowing where they stood, not really knowing, not feeling safe,
Yes.
having a good sense of self.
And we had conversations on that as well through the year on some of our platforms. And we had some people share that, you know, our relationship was built on purely sex. And we realize that now because we're locked up together and there's nothing there. Like there's no actual connection other than the sexual attraction. And we realized we don't like each other as much as we
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
So
yeah.
some people were brave enough to open up and have those conversations as well. And you're absolutely right. We had a comment now.
Oh yeah.
Where is the comment? It was for Ryan. Hi,
Oh, yeah.
Ryan. Ryan says stay-at-home orders may help to promote social distancing and work to flatten the curve, but I think we've seen the unintended negative consequences as it relates to mental health. Those are very real and should definitely be considered heavily. Whew.
Absolutely. And in response to that, I'm going to say, I'm going to admit that as someone who's normally on the sharing end, like I'm normally supporting people, I felt a degree of pressure to continue supporting people, and didn't take time to sort of think, you know, how is this affecting my mental health? You know, and we're going to have a really important session tomorrow night that's led by sort of Lewis and Philippa. And they're going to be talking about sort of under the title Battle of the Minds, you know, how we can be really resilient and really be planning ahead to protect our mental health. But so I don't want to sort of rain on their parade, but certainly from a sexual health perspective, sexual health and mental health, you know me, you know how I practice sexual health, that I know that they're very interlinked. I'm a very big advocate for how they're linked and how those two things can affect sexual performance, you know, can be influenced by mental health. You know, mental health is definitely a massive player in how people perceive themselves. So we know that the weather was really good outside. So thank you for that, Ryan. The weather was really good outside. So people were gardening, people were exercising. You know, I certainly was, you know, sort of thinking, I'm not going to be beat by this thing. So I'm going to be running. So I'm going to be doing couch to 5K challenge. I'm going to be doing as much as I can be doing to ensure that I come out of lockdown looking fantastic.
So these are all things you did to sort of help you get through it. So you didn't just do all this all at once, did you? It was kind of like,
well,
right.
I do think to some degree that you know, I was doing it all at once because I wanted to be a superhero. Yeah, so I was like gardening, I was exercising, I was staying busy. You know, I was attending webinars, I was doing podcasts. You know, listening to podcasts, listen to IG lives, and just soaking up what all of lockdown had to offer me from a personal development perspective.
Okay. There's another term I could call it as well, because all those things you listed, they're distractions. So
Absolutely.
were you essentially distracting yourself from the situation, to say it in the simplest way?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm saying all those things to highlight the danger of that distraction and how it sort of can take away from you dealing with the reality. Okay, we're going to talk about reality in a bit, which is the fact that actually we are in a lockdown situation. Yeah, this is affecting, you know, me as an individual. There's no way I can be the same exact person I was in January that I can be at the end of this year, because so much has happened. So I think that, you know, if you're in the community, or you might be, you know, specializing in something, whatever that thing is, it's like deceptive to think that you're not being affected by something. And it's important to be quite open about, you know, about that, you know. Even getting stuck in routines, like sexual routines, can be quite damaging, and you can lose that through a process of habituation. You can lose that thrill, you can lose that enjoyment, you can lose that ability to that.
Did you say sectioned routines or sexual routines?
Sexual routines, so sexual practice routines, so things that you do all the time, or things that have become quite regular, like it's not exciting anymore, it's not something that you enjoy. It's a massive part of personal and mental health. So, you know, if we're not enjoying those very natural acts, you know, because we're ignoring anything, you know, ignoring something, pretending something doesn't exist, or, you know, we're busying ourselves and we're doing these things, we can actually be damaging ourselves, you know, we don't realize that. And I think particularly considering the challenges within LGBTQ plus communities, particularly around relationships and finding people, you know, I think that is where we break away from the, you know, the mainstream issue of sexual health and mental health within our community, within the community, the general community, because the additional barriers are simply finding each other in the first place. Even in a fully functioning world, we couldn't find people because they're so few and far between, or so it seems. So imagine that now being locked down as if it wasn't bad enough, being in a lockdown situation and then watching that happen, and how detrimental that is to a personal sense of self, you know? What is one app that became really big during lockdown?
You want me to say it?
Oh,
app, but it's an app too on the website. It's Pornhub.
Oh wow, okay, you went in a completely different direction. Yes, but it's so true that you say, it's so interesting you said Pornhub, because you know, there was also advice around utilizing cams. So obviously being safe, there were campaigns that came around, you know, came about, you know, people should wear masks, you know, when you're engaging in sex, or you could, you know, do the.
That could be a kink. I'm just saying, I could get into that. You'd be Scorpion, I'd be Sub-Zero. Put my mask on. But anyway.
So, but you know, I think that was some of the advice was, it seemed really silly. Okay, it seemed like, oh, wear a mask and just, you know, flip around into reverse position so that you're facing away from each other, so that, you know, it would lessen the degree of.
They call that the reverse cowgirl, don't they? / cowboy. Ooh.
That's it, you know, and so it became one of the most popular positions. And so, you know, we're really thinking about some of the advice around positions, around wearing masks during sex, around whether or not, you know, wearing a condom or a femidom, or utilizing things like that, dental dams, were more and less useful, you know. And so at the end of the day, we're talking about sort of damage, we're talking about being able to find people, we're thinking about community, we're thinking about sexual and personal practice. And so, you know, all these things are really complicated by the situation in ways that we've never seen. So we know that, okay?
But I mean, it did have some positive effects as well, just through conversation. I mean, if you want, I can't give you anything personal because on my end it was dry. But
hey, at least you're honest.
On my end it was dry. I mean, I did try something to get creative, but what I'm getting at is I had a lot of conversations essentially, and there are some that are some folks that are coupled up and stuck in lockdown together. It gave them an opportunity to experiment. So it's like, let's get creative. Let's try something different with that dental dam, or, you know, let's go buy something online and let's really turn this up. You know, they got a chance. It improved some people's sex lives because they got a chance to experiment more. So I mean, there was some positives on it as well. If only everyone could have tapped into that, though.
Yeah. So I mean, we have a comment here before I go to the next section, which is again from Ryan. It says, I also agree with the earliest sentiment that shame is a huge tool used to control sexual behavior during the pandemic. Absolutely. Even before the pandemic. But shame does not influence long-lasting change, especially since it focuses on someone else's values and not individual values. It typically just pushes activity to the underground and potentially increases the risk. Absolutely. We're talking about risk factors and things like that, things that increase things being more dangerous, or people being put in compromised situations. Shame is an absolute element. This is where we sort of see people don't think about the complexities of not having a place to have sex. Not having your own place to have sex, having to share a space, and the shame factor of potentially being seen engaging in some type of sexual activity forces people to have sex in ways and in places that they wouldn't normally feel comfortable doing that, which leads to risk. And so absolutely, so shame, I'm reading shame, I'm reading values, I'm reading increased risk due to how you practice those things and how you demonstrate those values in that activity. So absolutely yes. So, but yeah, Ryan also says I'm here for the experimentation.
I'm here for it too, Ryan. Yes. I'm here for it too. Yeah. I'll tell you the story about the pizza and the one time.
Oh yes, I remember that one.
Philippa says experiment on yourself and explore your body. You don't know how right that is.
Absolutely. And you know, and when we talk about things like I'm sort of jumping a bit off topic now, when we talk about things like self screenings, you know, so we talk about sort of testicular screenings, talk about breast palpitations and screening. These are things that we would pick up on if we had been encouraged to be comfortable and familiar with how our body feels and what we should be expecting, you know, and unfortunately, because we're told if we do things like that, oh, that's you know, that's so inappropriate. How could you do that? Even the practice of not giving, you know, people having sort of being superstitious about, not superstitious, but wary about putting too young. If you're too young, you should be wearing things like silk because it makes your body feel a certain way. Too young, you know, these types of things.
Wait, silk?
Yeah, so like silk ginjams or like silk like pajamas or silk sheets, you know, that some people are very sensitive about, like letting their children wear things like that, or wearing, you know, or covering, you know, the bed in things like these because people believe, some people believe that they think that introduces younger children to how they're feeling too early on in their life. But I think
don't play with yourself thing.
Yeah, but I think that whole stigma of that being wicked, that being evil, you know, I think very much stems from sort of religious backgrounds as well. When it comes to, you know, sort of preserving yourself, preserving your body, but that can be detrimental because you're, you know, you don't understand, you don't know how things should feel, you don't know what makes you happy, you don't know, you know, what you should be holding your potential partner or partners accountable for knowing about you. If you express that, you say, actually, a good shoulder rub does it for me. Just for example, you know, just being silly, but you know, how would you know unless you took time to explore your body and get to know yourself? So
I will throw one deeper in there. I don't know if you want to elaborate on it or not, but that also causes that can cause poor sexual hygiene in an adult as well. Because being told that the act of touching your genitals and such as playing with yourself and is bad.
Oh yes.
Like then, you know, some people don't wash themselves that as properly as they should, which can lead to other sexual complications. Absolutely. And health matters.
Yeah, so poor hygiene. Yeah, I think that that is so under discussed. I almost feel like we need to have an entire you know, episode just on personal hygiene, because that affects partnerships. It affects the way that other partners perceive you upon having that interaction. You know, how much you're able to enjoy that, how much your partner's able to enjoy that, because you haven't just taken the time. So yeah, absolutely. It can be something as basic. So some of the recommendations that came out, and I'm right on time. I'm so happy about that. So you know, led to things.
Wait, before you move on, I want to read this out loud just because.
Okay.
Philippa says, I called your name, girl. I always clean myself after self-experimentation. Just thought I'll say.
Let the people know. Okay, yeah.
People know she's a clean kitty.
But some people don't, you know, some people don't recognize a simple thing. We take it for granted sometimes when we have conversations with people. I've certainly had a lot of conversations myself, just working in sexual health, where people have asked questions that you almost have to stop and think, are they trying to make a joke? Are they actually trying to just see how I react? But sometimes they are actually genuine questions. And you have to just sort of ask the question, you know, because we assume that people know information, and actually there's a lot to be desired. You know, people do have questions that they're afraid to ask. They don't want to be seen to be Googling things, or, you know, to asking their practitioners or even their community workers, you know, just to get a bit of guidance and steers. You know, we shouldn't ever assume that, you know, information is just widely accessible, or that people are engaging with information that can make them more informed decision makers. So yeah, so Ryan says, yes, please bring us this episode. Yeah, I am very passionate about personal hygiene. I'll be more than happy to elaborate on that.
Ooh, totally gave us one, John.
Yeah, we have a comment here. It says, across the board, lockdown has highlighted the issues of the one fix for all absolutely mentality. So the one fix for all mentality regarding community care. Relates more to sexual health, but absolutely including sexual health and well-being. The struggle is real. What works for one won't necessarily work for another person. I wonder if shame and stigma impacts this, especially when we talk about QTPOC or QTPOC, queer, trans, intersex people of color. Will people rather sneak and deal with their issues, so their additional struggles internally, than talk about them? And yeah, also here for the experimentation and the so Tolu said he was cooking, so he stopped cooking to come and leave this absolutely robust comment. We're really
Yes.
Philip says, what question were you asked, and what were you shocked about in sexual health services? Well, yeah, an example I'll give you is people asking whether or not you can catch diabetes from having sex, or people asking whether or not if they were to have be circumcised, would that affect their sexual performance? Or people asking questions like, if I were to, well, we know that the long-standing one around HIV, if I am living with HIV and I have sex with someone who does not have HIV, I will be cured of HIV. So that's another one that people tend to believe depending on their backgrounds, and you have to just quickly correct that, because that's obviously not how HIV works. But they're a very treatable, it's a very treatable condition, and it can be regulated and controlled, so that you can have a good quality of life. Yeah, so that's just a few that come to mind. But yeah,
there was I remember. Yeah, I was going to say, I remember our first session when we were still meeting up in person, but it was sort of my introduction to the sexual health outreach community. And you actually had to say, it's like, open your mind, because you'll be surprised that some people make it this far in adulthood, and there's some questions that you think are a joke, but they're absolutely serious. And I didn't believe you until I sat through that first session we had, and then I was just like,
yeah, and then people ask questions, yeah.
I'm like, wow. I had to just step back and go, okay, I realize that this is a problem for real. Things as simple as how do you put on a condom? It's like that's what I don't know. I was just taken aback, and it does highlight. I mean, especially the fact that people in those spaces were POC.
Yeah.
So it just goodness. I hurt my heart a little bit, but
because you realize how easy it is to share like the knowledge that you have, and how big of a difference that can make.
Yes, but also I had to be careful, because I had to learn how to share it without coming across like patronizing or condescending. Like, what, you don't know that? What you? Who raised you? Like, you had to put all of that aside and literally be like, no, come talk to me. What is it you need to know? We need to get you up to date. Like, jokes aside.
And again, that's only one aspect. It's like the knowledge aspect is one thing, but also leading into the pleasure aspect. I think that this year the narrative around sexual health has become so it's repetitive. I don't know if it's the same thing. I feel like we're just saying more of the same thing, and I'm just wondering how we can challenge each other to continue to have conversations more around the pleasure aspects. Are we even having fun? This is a question I ask myself on a daily basis, not just in a sexual context, but in life in general. If I'm not having fun doing this, why am I doing that? Okay, if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, how can I do something differently to ensure that I am enjoying? We have such a limited time on this earth, and I think we spend a lot of that time being unhappy because of fear and stigma. So yeah. The pleasure aspect is something I really want to be highlighting and pushing. I'm
just about to insert something there when I heard pleasure.
Yeah.
As a principle. Oh.
I'll finish it. Yeah.
Principle of pleasure.
Yeah, I just feel that we could be doing a better job at encouraging people to enjoy their experience. And there's actually someone I'm sort of in conversation with, Sue Sutherland. She might watch this back, but she's someone I met on social media, and she released something on I think it's GRSD, GRSD, and it talks about reintroducing people to themselves. Okay, so being sat in front of things like, so in the work that they do, they do a lot of sort of sensual touch. That, you know, when it came to inviting people into their practice, you know, putting a mirror in front of someone's legs in the air so they can see, you know, their vulva for the first time, you know, and because they had been too shy, or they weren't really sure about it, or they weren't really, they felt it was wrong, or they felt that that was, you know, they felt it was a strange experience. And so discussing that, working through that, being explicit in saying, let's talk about this, you know, let's, you know, make it a conversation, and how healing that can be for people, how sex positive that can be for people, how
Yeah.
lifting that can be for people. Just removing that guilt factor and saying, let's enjoy, you know, let's actually have a conversation where you can be honest about what makes you giggle, and I can be honest about what you don't need to giggle about, because actually this is extremely normal, and these questions are really common, you know, and how, you know, transformational that can be for people. So yeah, I just want to move on really quickly to the call to action portion. Now, this next segment is all about staying in reality. Okay, so one thing that we advertised sort of maybe probably about a year now, we were doing a sexual health mini campaign, and it was all about taking a break. I think that people pride themselves. Some people tend to pride themselves in how successful or good their sexual health is based on how many interactions they have, how many sexual interactions they can successfully have. And I think, you know, we forget that we have the option of taking a break. We have the option of not engaging in sex, and that can be quite sex positive as well. You know, one thing that I'm very, you know, adamant about doing on a regular basis is taking time to look in the mirror, okay, when you get up in the morning, and be aware of how you think of yourself. And I'm not talking about looking in the mirror fully dressed. I'm talking about looking in the mirror fresh out of the shower and doing one good rotation. Making sure that, first instance, you are happy with what you're seeing, okay? Because if you're not happy with what you're seeing, how can you imagine, how can you even expect someone else to be excited about what they're seeing? And so I think taking this time to be locked down and locked away from people has given us an opportunity to do a full rotation and learn to love every curve and every, you know, every angle and every bone, and be proud of that, because that building of confidence and taking time to do that without the expectation of having to meet other people or having to engage in any sort of sexual encounter with anyone else. Sometimes it's just good to know that when you see yourself, you say, this is good. And if you don't like what you're seeing, that's okay as well, because you can actually decide, okay, what do I want to do about this? How do I want to go about changing that? So when it comes to being sort of sex positive, you know, I think that this Christmas and this season of sort of holiday season where we're forced to be locked down, I think there are a few things that we can be considering. And one of them might be taking a break to then consider what's important to you. So is sex important to you? Is love important to you? Is friendship on its own important to you? And so we did a campaign for November Mondays, when we talk about, you know, it's okay to form LGBT, also identifies as queer, that sometimes we end up feeling like that's got to become a sexual encounter. And frankly, there's so much power with having queer friendships that are not sexual. Ryan says to start in the dark with some candlelight and gradually increase the light until you love and appreciate your body. Can we just, okay? You know, it's so, you know, it doesn't take much. A candle is cheap. What, a quid, 2 quid? You can get quite cheap candles, okay? And that can. Oh, now put the lights out. No. Yes, yes.
Like this, right?
You know, put on. I promise we didn't plan this. You know, when you think about what's important to you, is it just sex? Is it love? It's okay if just sex is important to you, that's fine as well. But just know that you know that that's important to you. And of course, thinking about personal development. So I spoke about, you know, if there's something that you want to change, if there's, you know, some type of resource that you want to tap into, or you want to work on, you know, almost like a coaching or like a lifestyle type of thing that you can go through to really go through an active, reflective process about what makes you sexually happy, what brings you the most pleasure, what gives you joy, and really think about things like insecure attachment, which I'm going to delve into right now. And this is something that we study sort of in psychology. I remember studying this many years ago. Insecure attachment, where you begin to really be attracted to someone, and you think that, oh, it's just something about the way they smile at me, and they hug me, and oh, I smell their fragrance, and oh my goodness, this is my partner for life. Pump the brakes, okay? Skirch! Pump the brakes. There is an assumption that because we've had a really good experience with someone, or because we've had a really positive interaction, that they are the one, that we have to stay with them, that we we will find no one else.
What's wrong with the wedding bells in the back of your mind?
Oh well, I mean, I think, and we sort of alluded to this in the recent post we did for November Mondays as well, which is that we just assume that because we've had a positive interaction with someone, we're supposed to be that's supposed to mean that it's the end to our singlehood, okay? That this is the answer to all of our questions, both personal and professional and emotional, that this person's going to fix all these things. But don't forget, people also come with their own baggage. They also come with their own problems. They also come with their own concerns. And at the end of the day, if we are not able to sort out our own, we can't expect someone else to come in and sort that out for us who barely knows us. And so it's really thinking about staying in reality, okay? So we have a comment here that says, attachment styles is a topic, certainly. I think
got a few there. They're doing well.
I would love to see, us do a session on that from a mental health perspective, definitely, and what attachment can mean. I'm sure that, Philippa and Luce would love to discuss that, certainly. Tolu says, so regarding the LGBTQ plus friendships, fully here for this. It's all about building community, but also platonic, romantic, erotic, ain't got to be mutually exclusive. Relationships are a journey in so many ways. Absolutely. So it can start in a certain way, and it can certainly, mold and morph into something else, definitely. But I think we should be careful to commit to that end product. As soon as we meet for the first time, we see, oh, what's the end product? We miss the journey. We miss just taking it organically and seeing what happens. And sometimes it does move on to the next stage of that thing, but sometimes it doesn't. And so we sort of set ourselves up to be disappointed by making assumptions about how we think things are going to end, as opposed to enjoying the book one page at a time.
Well, I don't read.
Don't read.
But
I was actually going back to one of the most influential apps of 2020. I actually want to emphasize that TikTok was something that really became really popular during this time. And I think that was highly underestimated. I think TikTok existed prior to lockdown, but somehow during lockdown, it just exploded. And people have used it for a variety of reasons, one of them is that people have shared a lot of really valuable information. And it's about thinking beyond these sort of relationships that sometimes we make assumptions about. To think about being open-minded, not limiting ourselves. We're thinking about being sex positive, relationship positive. Don't limit ourselves. We think, oh, I have this exact person that I'm going to be with, and I think this is what they're going to look like. Sometimes we limit what we actually have access to because we have such a preconceived notion about who we need to have.
Idealism, because you're looking for the ideal lover.
Absolutely.
Ideal person, and I hear it sometimes too, and I give a side eye when you hear people say, "Oh, I can't wait! I want to have a mixed race man." And here we go.
Here we go.
Wow.
And it doesn't mean because you have a physically, that's colorism anyway. We need to really explore that. It's one thing to have a preference, it's perfectly fine. I have dated the spectrum. I've dated the spectrum.
When you said that, you made yourself sound like a hoe.
I've lived. I'm not dead. Okay. So I think it's really, So Ryan asked the question: can polyamory be a part of this discussion? Absolutely, and I think that this is something that Sue Sutherland is really big on as well as our other friend whose name eludes me right now, where we speak about people being ashamed to include polyamory in the love relationship and the love conversation, because this is why I tend to say partner or partners, okay? Because we don't want to assume that people only have one partner in for a period of time or in their lifetime even. So, but just backpedaling a tiny bit, when we look at the holiday season that's approaching, okay, and we're really thinking about resisting the urge to splurge, okay. So I think that goes well, in hand with sort of polyamory, it goes in line with having multiple partners or just one partner, if that's what you're
Wait, but
into.
the urge to splurge and are you saying not to date two people at the same time because you're gonna have to buy more gifts? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think there's two things I'm saying. I think that people think, oh, it's the holidays, I'll deal with these issues after the holidays. It seems to be this big momentous occasion that people enjoy food and friendships and love and sex and everything. And then they start the new year fresh with a fresh shower, and they, rearrange their flat, and they start this journey of starting over. But really, all of the choices that we've made during that holiday period, whether they be detrimental to our sexual health or relationships, or even the things that we eat during that time, they follow us because our bodies we're just flesh, we're just bodies, so bodies react to the way that we treat them. And so when we talk about resisting the urge to splurge, it's still about being temperate and moderate in the way that we approach things. Don't go wild and go mad, because to everything that we do, I think there's consequences. And feel free to disagree, but I think that, when it comes to even being mad about things, I tend to say, be mad about it for 24 hours. And then
that's too long sometimes.
Even that's too long sometimes, yeah.
But I'm coming from a culture where people like to talk aggressively. So you be mad, you got to get it out. We put it out, get it out. Let's squash it right now.
Yeah.
And then it's done. It's like, okay, girl, what we doing for lunch?
Well, that might work for everyone, but I'm saying, when we wallow in it, when we sort of almost mistreat ourselves, we actually miss out and we actually lose out. Based on what the after effects might be. So when I say resist the urge to splurge, so we talk about emotional eating, we talk about emotional shagging or sleeping. So it's because they both
live, and you just keep introducing these things, and I'm just like, what is my life? My God, emotional eating, I got down pat. Okay, I trained that. But the what? Emotional shagging? Listen.
Yeah. I just think that we have to be aware of the choices that we're going to be making. We should always be aware of them. But I think particularly during this time, because of the time of year that we've had, people have reached their wits' end. They're going for it. They're doing what makes them, what they think will make them happy, or the things that they think will lead to feeling better about the situation that they're in. So just being aware that any decisions that we're making during this time, let's be really aware of what the consequences could be. And this will not be everyone's approach. This will not be what everyone would be willing to do or even thinks is a great idea. But just live with intent. Live freely, but live with intent, and with a mind that actually there's a result to everything that we do. So I would love to have people say about that in the comments, actually. But I say that because we come from a culture of, and I've made a list, send nudes, or people saying things like, I only date white, or what are you cut, uncut? What's the circumcision situation? Or saying, oh, actually, I'm on the DL, so
toxic.
I can't really.
Couldn't resist.
Again, sorry.
I said toxic.
Yeah, and that's such a classic. These are things. These are grinder things that will stay with me my entire lifetime. Some of the really.
Oh, you forgot mask versus not mask.
Yeah, as well. No femmes. So Ryan says, you already know I'm here for intention. Absolutely. So it's about really thinking about the toxic nature of some of the things that we have, some of these classic pet peeves of online dating, and I'm trying to make it as quite broad as possible, particularly because we when we say LGBTQ plus, we don't mean gay. Okay, there is a spectrum of people with all different types of experiences and ways that they approach their dating experiences. But toxicity is toxicity, and so maybe thinking about discontinuing some practices that have led to being exposed to such things, not standing for these types of things, setting your boundaries and deciding what you're going to do going forward and what you're not going to do, what you're going to deal with, what you're going to stand for and what you're not going to stand for or deal with. So
I was going to say, and saying all of that, and for the purpose of timing as well. So how would you say, all right, now that we've I've gone over our sex positive Christmas,
yeah.
I'm asking you, what's Harvey doing for 2021 to keep this vibe going?
I'm so glad you asked me. And yes, it's scripted because I wanted to make sure I wrote them down, because I came across some of these on TikTok, over the lockdown period. Mm-hmm. And one thing that a person said was, no more arguing with people. I will not be arguing with anyone over anything. Okay, because I think that everyone's entitled to their opinion, and sometimes those opinions, don't always align, and so it leads to arguing. But I'm not going to argue either on social media about, or of course we talk about apps. We shouldn't be arguing with anyone. We have to protect that emotional energy and even physical energy, and be careful who we argue with. Okay.
Amen.
When it comes to allowing dysfunctional family members to steal my joy, I will personally not be allowing any family members to steal my joy. Anyone who chooses to be dysfunctional, I hope that you see this video. If you feel like you fall into that category, know that I will not be allowing you to steal my joy. Thank you. Just declaring that
Caught the
now.
shade. You caught the shade. I caught the shade. Next.
I hope those who need to catch it will catch it. And I challenge others to do that as well. When it comes to comparing myself to other people, I'm going to be aiming not to be doing that. I think we all tend to do a bit of that, like, oh, how are you doing? How am I doing? I think that that's one of the most toxic things that we can do to ourselves, you know, when it comes to, you know, looking in that mirror and learning to love oneself and catching one's reflection. Are you just enjoying for what it is, or are you looking to compare it to something else that you've seen somewhere else? So it's about being the best that you can actually be and things that make you happy, and not being anything else, because that can lead to a variety of issues that we already know. Trying to change people who are determined to stay the same. Okay, that might be someone that we've had a sexual relationship with. It might be someone that we had an emotional relationship. It might be a friendship. It might be family. It might be anyone else who wants to come and steal that joy. We're focusing on sex positivity. We're focusing on things that make us happy. We're focusing on how we exist in our bodies. We're exploring touch. We're enjoying the entire situation. But we're doing that on our own terms, not on someone else's terms. And so if there are people around us who are being oppressive, or they're creating situations where we're not able to live on our own terms, then we're going to be no longer dealing with those people because they're acting in a classic toxic way. And then finally, waiting for external validation to boost my own confidence. There's an expression that comes up that says, if someone tells you, ooh, you look so nice today, saying, yes, my such and such told me that this morning, thank you, for example, you know, or saying, you know, someone says, oh, you look so good today, you say, oh, thank you, I think so as well, just kidding. But, you know, being thankful, but not being dependent on people telling us that we look good, that we dressed really well, or that, you know, they think that we're good. But no, it's okay to know. It's okay to know that you look good today. It's okay to give yourself a shoulder in the mirror and say, you know, well done. You know, well done today. You know? But expecting
Well
that.
done. You just say well done. The profanity comes out of me.
No, well done.
Listen. Oh yes. God damn it. Sorry, but
Yeah.
we got to quote.
So Ryan here says, you know, we can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. And that comes straight from James Baldwin himself, which I think is just so amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I posted something the other day that said we should not measure ourselves based on, you know, through the lens of the eyes of the joyless. So if someone is unhappy with themselves, we should not be measuring ourselves by thinking about how they go about describing us or seeing us. And I just felt the need as soon as I heard that, you know, to share it on social media, just to remind everyone, you know, anyone who read that actually we should not be measuring how we feel about ourselves or our worth or our value based on someone who themselves is not happy describes us or how they see us. And so waiting on external validation is an absolute no for me. And so those are my sort of 5 things: arguing with people, dealing with dysfunctional family members, comparing my life to other people's lives, trying to change other people who don't want to change, and of course waiting for external validation are 5 things I will not be carrying into 2021 with me, because no. Okay. So yes. King, do you have any announcements for this week? I know we have some fundings coming up that you want to post about.
Yeah, this is just part 1 in the 5-part series. And so tomorrow we have Battle of the Minds. That's with Lewis Mills and Philippa Peart. Philippa, who's there? Hey, girl. And Wednesday we have Sugar and Spice. And that is, oh God, it slipped my mind. It is.
That's again talking about holidays, isn't it? So, you know, holidays. Oh, I'm gonna eat. You know, but we think, don't forget, once we've eaten that, it does make us feel a certain type of way. I think that we do need to just, you know, there's a way of enjoying without overdoing it. For me, I definitely know I want to eat loads of sweet things, but I'm thinking about even my adult skin. Okay, even my adult skin, I think you know, does react bad to things like dairy, which of course we know can create some allergies sometimes. Or if I'm feeling not so positive about myself, and I want to not overdo it, so I can, you know, make sure that I feel confident, in the way that I present.
I mean, I'm alone, so it's like I'm gonna eat and put on the spandex because I don't even wear drawers around the house. I just throw on my leggings. But sorry, I know I overshare sometimes, but I love it.
This is the space, yeah.
Yeah, so that's Wednesday. And Thursday's grassroots funding. That's with Faye and myself again. I'm gonna try and tease it out of her mind. She's gonna teach me. And you're gonna learn. And Friday is hatching a plan for 2021, and that is with Staying in Touches. That's the name of her company, Starla, and myself as well. And we'll be talking about how we plan to go forward and what's the word again? Equality.
So yeah, I think it's about creating social wealth. It's about thinking about cultural capital, how we can build each other up as LGBT people of color, and ensure that when we emerge in 2021, that we feel prepared, we've got a plan, we feel ready to execute actions that help to improve ourselves and those in our community. So,
I'm taking these all as teaching sessions, so y'all teaching me a lot.
I'll be watching the rest of the sessions this week as well. I think I have lots to take away and learn from those sessions. So I hope that you can join us.
Oh, and one more quick thing, just plugging it in there. We have a holiday well-being drive, and we're encouraging you to sign up to our mailing list. And there's a little incentive. We're going to pop you a little well-being pack in the mail. And you'll see the information on that on our IG. That's at Black Beetle Health, or you can visit blackbeetlehealth.co.uk for more information on it as well. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you guys for attending. Really great conversation. I've made a note of some ideas of some events we need to be doing, just out of the comments alone. So I think it's amazing. We'll be saving your comments today so we can reflect on them. But thank you so much for attending.
All right. Oh.